Hello, everyone. We are today here with Ms. Nigar Shaji, who's the project director of the Aditya mission at ISRO. And she's one of the more famous women in STEM here in India today. So without any more delay, let me introduce you to her and leave it to her to talk more about herself. Hello, Ms. Nigar. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm also happy to be here.
So everybody today knows you as the project director of the Aditya mission, but can we rewind a little bit? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and when you got into ISRO?
Yeah, I had my school education in my hometown. It is southern part of Tamil Nadu. And then I had my engineering in Tirunelveli, that's nearby district headquarters to my town. So where I had the engineering, and then immediately after the engineering, maybe after 6 months in 1987, I joined ISRO. Initially, I started my career as a radar engineer and in Sriharikota, that launch base where Aditya-L1 was launched. And later moved on, after 4 years, I moved on to this Europe Satellite Center, and there I started my spacecraft testing after my career as a spacecraft testing engineer. And then slowly I climbed up the ladder and I have become, was heading a telemetry division where almost all the ISRO's the packages are made for all the spacecrafts. And then I have become a associate project director for a ResourceSat mission. That's a remote sensing mission, which is still in operation in orbit. And later I took over as project director Aditya-L1 in 2016. And the last 8 years, you have been working on this mission. And today, that I could see the success of the mission, of my hard work and my team's work of 8 years today. And now presently I'm holding the position of a program director for all the low orbit missions and the planetary missions.
Wonderful. That is really impressive. And if I may say so, your career trajectory sounds like the dream of many young engineers in India today. There are a lot of people who are excited about space and who want to study aeronautics and astronomy and astrophysics and want to get into ISRO. It's such a golden age for space exploration, and it's coming up in a very big way in India. Before we talk a little bit about ISRO, can you tell us about your childhood? What was it like growing up? I believe you grew up in Tenkasi. So what was it like growing up there and studying in Madurai? And how did you get into ISRO?
My childhood, because my parents were very supportive. My father was quite well educated, and he and my mother, both of them were very much that their children, or especially girl child, should be on their own stand and financially independent. So that was their thinking. So they gave us all the freedom to do what we like to do. So that's how, because my childhood it's a very happy childhood and very supportive parents, and we were not restrained to do. So we know our limits, and we were utilizing of the freedom what our parents gave, and I was doing well in school, and immediately then I got an opportunity because I like to do engineering. I did the engineering, and then I was looking for a job like after engineering. So I happened to get an advertisement from ISRO, and I applied for it, and then I got selected in the ISRO. That's how I went into ISRO. And once I joined ISRO, I liked that job because it was very much to utilize what I have studied, and it was really very fun and challenging to be in ISRO to do the things. And ISRO also is a nice environment to work in, and you have a lot of freedom to work, and you can always propose what you want to do. So that's a different. The environment is very really nice in ISRO to grow up. So I put my best effort, and I could come this far in ISRO. Initially, when I joined, that environment was a little, what do you say? I'm not like, I was not having that much confidence. I could fare well among this competition and among my peers. And but later I realized, yes, if I will, I can do it. So after that, I never had an initial. There was a maybe you can say that it is a starting trouble or that initial inertia. But later, I'm very comfortable with my peers, and I could do what I like to do, and I could prove myself that I also equally capable as my peers.
That's amazing. It's really nice to hear that everyone who works at ISRO also gets this opportunity to sort of grow and prove themselves. So we are familiar with a lot of names now who are big names in ISRO. Can you tell us a little bit about the kind of people that you worked with in the 80s and 90s and the kind of people you work with now?
No, I'm not seeing a very big drastic change in the people whom because the ISRO culture is like that. I don't think in the past so many years that culture has changed a lot. So yeah, initially when I worked, it's all my bosses were all very good. And they were all very supportive, and they never differentiated male, female, or anything. My peers, my colleagues, everyone was very supportive. As I feel, I didn't receive. There's not much change because now I am sitting as a boss, and I am grooming a lot of people under me. So I am also trying to replicate what my bosses has done to me, to my the juniors or to my colleagues.
So today you said you are in charge of a lot of low Earth missions. Can you expand a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's actually, as you see, that ISRO was started with a motive that the technology should be useful for upliftment of the countrymen. So that way, ISRO started with communication and remote sensing satellites from the beginning. So we have a huge fleet of spacecrafts which does this job of communication, remote sensing. So in that, it's almost now around 50 spacecraft may be in space for the communication and remote sensing and navigation spacecraft. So our main job, because from different ministries, we will get a requirement of for all the data for their e-governance and that agriculture, all those applications. So we have earlier we were concentrating on having a self-sufficiency in both these areas, as well as then we entered into navigation area, and now after that, once we got the self-sufficiency in all these applications, we moved on to the interplanetary missions and further challenges.
Right. So when we hear about using satellite for Earth observation and for data related to, like you said, agriculture and say even pollution and other aspects, we understand that we receive the data and then we can act on it. But could you walk us through the process of how this happens? In what form is the data received? And then how is it processed in ISRO before it is released out?
Yeah, we have we have different centers which does different jobs. If you take our center, you are a satellite center, we make spacecrafts. And once the spacecraft is and launch vehicle did the job of launching the spacecraft. Then once the spacecraft is in space, we receive data. We have tracking stations. We have two tracking stations. For the communication, we have a station at Hassan, and for remote sensing, we have a remote sensing and planetary missions. We have a center at Bangalore itself, the data reception centers.
Both
So,
are
and
in
also
Karnataka.
in Karnataka, they will be controlling the spacecraft. And for remote sensing, that will be huge data, which will be the photographs of whatever that will be photographed from space. So that will be downloaded, and we have a center at NRSC, Hyderabad. So that receives the data, and they have receiving the data, correcting the data for all its calibration data, and we need a lot of corrections to that data. And this NRSC Hyderabad station will receive the orders like we wanted to view such and such area, and such is the resolution, or such is the product we want. So accordingly, because we have a fleet of spacecrafts, and this Hyderabad station will be receiving the data, and they will have the process the data, and as a photographs in whatever form the user requirement is there, we will be supplying as a product, disseminate the product from the Hyderabad station. They will have all the softwares necessary for making the product and in a usable format to the users in whatever way they want.
And is all of this data publicly accessible?
Yes, we have a website and you can lat long or positions you can give and you can get the data.
Right. It's the same place where we get the Chandrayaan data as well right
Yes,
now.
yes.
So ISRO has moved on from just observing Earth to now turning around the other side and looking at the sun. I know that Aditya has been in the works for at least a decade. It's been talked about in ISRO before the mission actually came to be realized. Can you also tell us the process of development? So now a project is sanctioned. At what points are the payloads decided, and how does the manufacturing and testing happen, and what is the timeline for this?
Yeah, actually, this project originally when we submitted the project report, the timeline what we mentioned or we anticipated like it will be like 4 to 5 years will be in a position to have this launch. So once the project got approved and then it is all decided which are all the instruments is going to be there and it is going to be at L1. So what are all required for the development of those instruments? Starting from we'll have a lot of review process like a preliminary design review, like it goes. So preliminary design review when it go that it's a concept selection finalization. What are all the how the instruments is going to be, how the spacecraft is going to be, what is the positional accuracy the payload demands, and where we have to be, what is the orbit we have to be. So all those things will take an year to finalize those things, and the metal cutting starts after that. So after that, the development starts. That is, by the time they will have a small the concept proving engineering and all those things. So it would have done earlier itself. When they propose itself, they would have. So like that, that one, a small lab model they do. That is concept proving.
Okay.
So by the time we come to this preliminary concept, this instrument, that basic principle, basic concept would have been already tried, not as a full-fledged instrument. It will be like a concept proving. So such things would have already happened by the time. Then by the time we, after 1.5 years, when we have the preliminary design review and finalizing, this is what the spacecraft is going to be. Then they will start by the time parallelly we will do the procurement also, because we have a lot of items which is a long lead ones. So that also we should have started, we have started parallelly, so that by the time this design gets completed, the component should be in hand. So we start the procurement process much in advance. And concept proving, these are all the two items which we start earlier when we propose the project itself. So by the time project approval and the preliminary design completes, these two will be already in place. So we start our work. Like then the fabrication, all those things will start. And because these instruments are it's little complex instruments, and it took more than, there were some failures of the sub components, the optical components we saw in the meantime. So that and all it took little more extra time because of the complexity of the instruments. It took we couldn't complete it in the what we proposed as 4 years, and in the meantime we had some delay due to COVID too. So it's almost 1.5 year. We were unable to go in the pace we wanted. So that's how it took 8 years. So the instrument development starts, and also we will have various models, because in space we cannot take a chance. So you should have one model, the verification model, where all the test, everything rigorous verification will be done, and the final model will be developed. So that then all the instruments will come to our clean room, because this mission has a very stringent requirement of contamination levels. So the clean room should be much, much cleaner than our normal spacecraft. So we have a separate dress, the gloves, everything. The people have to work also in like almost like an astronaut type dress, so that your footfalls will be less and the cleanliness can be maintained. So once each one instrument arrived and all the subsystems will arrive at the when we start integrating, and it almost took 7 to almost a year it takes for integration and the spacecraft level testing, because the testing is our bread and butter, because how best you do the testing, and you will have a flawless performance in the orbit. So that's how the whole journey went on.
So these were the engineering aspects of the mission. Can you tell us about the scientific aspects? How are the mission objectives decided? Who decides them? And what are the institutes that are involved in deciding what kind of science we want out of a mission?
Yeah, see, we have it's mainly the two aspects these instruments were. See, we will have a committee and we will call for an announcement of opportunity we give. So, we are planning for such a heliophysics related mission. So the different institutes will come with their proposals. And out of these proposals, it will be a committee will select which are all the proposals which is suitable, viable, and it is a pragmatic ones. So such things will be selected. Of this, 7 instruments were selected. So that the main goal was the overall the solar events study should be covered. So mainly we see that we have been concentrating on coronal mass ejection, solar flares, and solar winds. These are all the main. The second objective is to have a better space weather model. Because if you see now, space weather is a very that it's an upcoming one. Like Earth weather, we need space weather too, because now we have lot of space assets in the orbit. So these the solar wind and flares, these ejections with a high intensity that can hamper this space asset. So almost US, NASA, ESA, everybody is developing a better solar space weather model, so that we will be in a position to predict exactly when this intensity is going to be higher, when it is to be lower, and when it starts, so that we can give a warning to our space asset system so that they can save themselves, or we can put off to a lower power mode and save it from that. So that is the ultimate aim. So that all countries are going on developing a very good space weather model, which is so still all over the world we don't have a very precise or space weather model. Still people are, though after so many years of so many missions of solar studies, it's still not well understood, like you can tell. See, such events are happening. Still, the prediction of the events, or still lot more things to be need to be understood from sun. See, especially one thing I'll tell, that's coronal heating. So still, it is not very clear. If you see the center of the sun, it's like some that it is 4,000, 5,000 degrees centigrade means. As it as per thermodynamic law, as it travels further to the corona, it is a huge. The sun dia is so huge. When it travels, actually, it should reduce the temperature. But if you see, the coronal temperature is of the order of 1 to 2 million degrees centigrade.
Yeah.
So people are trying to understand what makes it so hot. What is the process which makes? So there are some theories about the magnetic reconnection. So we wanted to, because world over these studies are being done. So we also wanted to understand with our coronagraph. This is the main instrument. So that will be always trying to map the magnetic field of the corona and how the magnetic reconnections are. So that way, and the flares. Then in that, it's all our 7 instruments has a lot of uniqueness compared to what is already being done. So this 3 in situ instruments will be concentrating on solar wind, and we have 3 instruments on solar flare. So all this, then the institutes involved. So this 2 major instruments, all these 7 instruments are the 5 instruments are the sister. It's under ISRO. It is different institutes under ISRO. We have 3 science institutes under ISRO. So you've got Physical Research Laboratory, Ahmedabad, and SPL, Trivandrum. So there, and our own URF Satellite Center have put 2 payloads, which X-ray spectrometers, which can study the flares. So, and the 2 institutes which got involved in Indian Institute of Astrophysics, which developed the coronagraph, and IUCA, Inter-University Center for Astronomy and Astrophysics, Pune. They have developed that UV, that it studies the sun spectrum in the UV spectrum. So it is also will be studying the center of the disk. the chromosphere and photosphere, and our coronagraph will study the corona and all the other things, solar flare and so. This is how the science which came out, and it was decided to go ahead with this suite of instruments.
Got it. Just to clarify for our viewers who may not be familiar, please correct me if I'm wrong. Solar wind is ionized particles that stream from the sun, and space weather is the effect that these particles have on satellites and basically the atmosphere of Earth as well, because they interact with the atmosphere, which is what produces our northern lights and southern lights. And corona is the outermost region. It is what we see during a full solar eclipse, the sort of shading around that we see. And coronal mass ejection is when there is actual mass being released from the sun, whereas solar flares are relatively mellower, and it is just more ions being released. Would that be accurate?
Nice. You have a good understanding of what the solar.
Thank you. And there is magnetic flux on the sun, and there are these lines, the magnetic field lines that form, and sunspots and coronal mass ejections occur because these magnetic lines get tangled up and that region becomes colder. Yes. Okay. So just to clarify to all of our viewers. So what kind of data will we be expecting from Aditya once it starts its operations?
No, it's scientific data. The coronagraph will be giving out, because we have lots of modes of operation. If you if you want to sit and stare a particular portion of the sun, or you have you move it, and you see when you start, see CMEs, we will find out when it starts. If you want to track it, you can do it. So we have that polarimeter which maps them, that also we get. So different modes of operation that observers who wants particular observation, they can give us that, okay, they can ask for observation time. See, I want to such and such things to be observed, please provide us with observation time. So there is a committee which decides, because a lot of requests will come. So we decide the priority and the science outcome based on that. We'll be giving the observation time. Like other solar, wind and all, even we have that will be continuous in situ, the particles, whatever the ionized particles, what we eject from that. And we also going to have solar max also in soon. Year or two. So as the solar, 11-year solar cycle, that sunspots will be more. So that time the ejections also, because there is some connection between the sunspots and the CMEs. So that is also not very well understood, but that whenever the two happens parallelly, like that's what is being understood. So it's like the data will be again collected from.
So can you tell us about the kind of technical data that would be received from Aditya and how it would be interpreted?
The data will be collected at our Bangalore center, and it will be disseminated to. We will strip each payload, because it comes as a whole. All the payloads together it comes out, and we will strip it and disseminate to individual, all the 7 payloads data to individual scientist who is the principal scientist. There will be a principal scientist for each of the payload. So to them or the institute, we will be disseminating and sending. They do all the corrections to the data based on the calibration data that income. There will be a lot of corrections required on the observed data. So they do it and they process it, and they have 2-3 levels of processing. And finally, as a product, it will be sent back to us for disseminating to public. And the scientists will be, because it takes some months, because to work on the data, and is there something special we have found out compared to the earlier findings, and what is the outcome. So the processing and understand that what you want to infer from the data, it takes time. So scientists need to really have to work on it, and depends on how well they interpret the data and what are all the findings we get, how many papers with that, speaks of the success of the mission.
Right. I wanted to touch upon the orbital physics a little bit. So we know that Aditya is going to L1. L1 to L5 are these Lagrange points, which are points in a two-body system where, just to simplify, we can say that the gravity of the two kind of balance each other out, so that a spacecraft can remain in a halo orbit, which is an orbit around nothing. And these points move with the Earth as the Earth goes around the sun. Now, L1, I understand, is between the sun and the Earth. But what makes L1 more preferable to, say, L3 or L4? And why not have Aditya go around the sun instead of being at L1?
Yeah, it's L1, it is between sun and earth. See, of the L 5 points where the gravitational pull of the two bodies balance each other, and we have a almost null type of force, and all these points act as some imaginary planets where we can orbit around those points, balancing the two forces. So here L1 is very advantageous for sun observation because the point travels with the Earth, always facing the sun. So and our spacecraft also will be orbiting around it moves along with the Earth, and so continuously we will be seeing the sun and observing the sun. So similarly, if you see L2, L2 is on the other side of the Earth. That is a very good point for astronomical observation. If you see that James Webb telescope,
Yeah.
it is on L2.
Yeah.
So where it is a very good advantage. It can always view the sun. At the same time, the sun can be blocked. So that we will get for your cooling as well as the sunlight disturbance on observing the deep sky, all that can be avoided, and it is natural point to sky. So L3, it is on the other side of the sun. Still nobody has tried what because we were not very sure how, and distance is also very far when you go
Right.
to L3. And L4, L5 are all, we call it as a stable point. There not maintenance is not there. Normally that lot of this asteroids belts will
Asteroids.
be they will be clustered around that points. So this is that's why this point is selected, and this is first time we are doing from ISRO. We are doing a first time mission to that, and it is going to be little challenging to maintain it around that balancing, and it is not like that other planetary missions where you have the planet will be attracting, and here it is at the orbit also. It's a three-dimensional orbit. It's not a single plane orbit. It's
Oh,
will be
okay.
it's a three-dimensional orbit. It will be like you can that finally if you see the orbit in front of the Earth, it will be like a potato. It is will be varying. Oh, it will go like that. It will not be not on a particular plane. It will be continuously rotating. It will be
Is there
wobbling.
some maneuvering required from Earth?
Yes, every time we have to maneuver it to bring back to that. Otherwise, it will have a tendency to go either towards the earth or towards the sun.
Ah, okay, okay.
Then you are asking about orbiting around the sun. So for that, if you go nearer and nearer, the temperature, the thermal system, what you have to develop, it has a lot of challenges. And continuously orbiting the sun, very close to the sun, nobody has tried. Only the solar probes, what has been tried by NASA, that has a
Okay.
flyby.
Hmm.
Flyby, they have a huge umbrella type. You might have seen that solar probe that protects the
Yeah.
thumb, and it just has a flyby only, not as a continuous. It's only maybe in future we have a better thermal protection system. We can closely orbit around the sun. We can have better studies about the sun. So now the solar probe also in the L1 we will not have much access to the poles of the sun. Okay, we'll be doing on the equatorial region, and because you know that the sun also that rotational, if you see the pole rotation is faster than the equator rotation.
Equator.
Because of the twisting only, you have all this breaking of the magnetic lines and all they say. So that even the pole change reverses every solar cycle. If you see that pole of the sun reverses also, there is a pole
Hmm.
reversal also happens because of this twisting. So there is a lot of very secrets or what are a lot of findings to be still understand this our own star, which is because of which we live here.
Yeah.
So so that's how it is. It is big mainly because of the technology we have not yet had. So that's why we are not going very close to the sun.
And in the future, now we are hoping to have Mangalyaan 2, which will likely be a lander, if I'm not mistaken. And then we have Chandrayaan, the next one, the 4, which will also be in collaboration with Japan. There are talks of Shukrayan, which will be an orbiter around Venus. And of course, Gaganyaan is going on. What role would you be playing in the future?
All the interplanetary missions, I'll be playing a role in that.
I know that LUPEX will probably go up before 2026, but do we have a timeline for, or rather at least after 2026, do we have a timeline for the other two?
Yeah, actually, we wanted to have it also in that Mars landing, because now we have mastered the landing with no atmosphere, planet with no atmosphere. This
Yeah.
Mars, if you see, it has a small thin atmosphere. So that's the next challenge, because it will be totally different than from Chandrayaan, though we can utilize all the lessons learned from Chandrayaan, but it's a little different. Techniques need to be used because it has an atmosphere. So that also all within this decade, we wanted to finish all these programs.
Sounds great. This sounds like a really exciting time for ISRO as well. I think before we wrap up, I would just like to ask you a couple of questions about what you would say to students now. Now there are lots of exciting missions coming ahead, and I'm sure a lot of people would be looking forward to hopefully working with ISRO. How can students who have an interest in this sort of take their career path towards becoming involved in these projects?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, because the spacecraft or the launch vehicle or the whole whatever the ISRO does, it requires various disciplines of engineering. It is not that only aerospace can work in ISRO, like, because it's a amalgamation of so many disciplines. You have electronics, communication, you have maths, physics. We have all the flight dynamics people will have need to have a very good background with maths. So, like that, most of the engineering and most of the science team can have an opportunity to work. And we conduct every year, there is a test that is all over India. ISRO conducts a test for the recruitment. So you can participate in it once you are through in the test, and you will be called for an interview, and you will be selected. But like software industry, we don't have recruitment in lots. We have a very limited recruitment, so you need to work on that. And what I have to do, whatever you do it with not ISRO or anything. Whatever you do with that involvement and passion, and automatically. And also you concentrate for the students. I'm telling it, concentrate on the basics. Now that you have during your course time itself, you try to learn more basics than okay, you need to score marks also, but try to understand the basic. That will only finally help, because we will be working in that core engineering fields where the basics are the must. It's not like that's only not only because software is a portion of it. Of this. There's a lot of hardware and a lot of mechanical engineering is involved, thermal engineering is involved. So if you are in any field of science as well as engineering, you can always have a career in ISRO.
That sounds really promising. I hope students and our young viewers who see this find this helpful. I think my last question for you would be that today you are a role model for women in India in STEM, in science, and in engineering. Would you like to share anything about, your growth as a woman in STEM? Were there any kind of personal hurdles that you had to overcome, your support system, and what you would generally tell women who have to work in an area that is filled with a lot of men?
Yeah. See, one thing is, because of the stereotyping and the societal culture, what we have, we women, our self awareness of our own capabilities and the confidence is a little low because of all these things. So we need to overcome that, and we have to think that there is because we I don't think now compared to yesterday years, now it's a lot of improvement and many women are coming. Because we see in our age it's very less women are coming. So now in our office also we have a strength of 28% female population supporting the entire program. So it's the only we have to our inherent confidence, and has to be we have to overcome our own the stereotyping and things like that. And build a better support system, because that only, because if you come to a career in ISRO or anywhere, you have to put in lot of effort. See, you cannot take a lenience because you are a female. So you have to, I don't agree for all those things. We have to rise ourselves on par with what they demand, rather than taking a lenience because we are female and we have a lot of roles to play. Sure, it's true that we have lot of roles to play, multiple roles to play. But what we need to do is build a good support system so that we can devote more time to our career as well as to our work, so that we can be successful in our career.
Right. And institutions are also changing now and hopefully will offer more institutional support as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nigar. This was a wonderful discussion. It was very enlightening. I learned a lot and I hope our readers did too. Thank you for sparing your Saturday morning to us to have this lovely discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to reach to the people. So thank you. Thank you once again.